I'm not a very adversarial atheist. I think religion is incorrect, but I don't hate it, and I respect the beliefs of religious people. I don't object to religion as a source of morality. Before secular societies like the United States, morals were established on the pretense of a god or gods who wanted people to act in a certain way. As an atheist, I can freely admit that religious values of respect and togetherness are still perfectly valid even without the pretense. An atheist can be just as moral as a religious person because he or she follows an internal moral compass, as Christopher Hitchens points out, and the values given by society. But many of these values probably have a religious source. I do, however, view religion as an incorrect and obsolete way of looking at the natural world. Young Earth creationism has been scientifically disproved. I have found no evidence for the existence of God, and the formation of matter, stars, and galaxies, the origins of life, and the diversity of life on Earth have all been explained without the need for God. This is why I say that I can't disprove God, but I see no reason for a God. But what really irritates me are those creationists who claim that there are no transitional fossils. If you'll permit me a moment of vulgarity, my first reaction upon hearing this statement is a resounding, "What the f*** are they talking about?" So, without further ado, I present to you what could be the nerdiest video I ever make, my top 9 favorite transitional fossils. Number 9. The only dinosaur on this list, Psittacosaurus from the early Cretaceous, is an early ceratopsian. Small and bipedal, Psittacosaurus still had characteristic ceratopsian features, like a neck frill and a beak. Psittacosaurus is a perfect transitional form between ancestors like Yin Long, with only minor changes to the bones in the back of the skull, and huge horned ceratopsians like Triceratops. Number 8. A species of manatee from 50 million years ago, Pisosiren had the skull and body of a modern manatee, with a downturned snout and thick, dense ribs for ballast, but it still had legs adapted for walking on land. This implies an amphibious existence for the ancestor of manatees, dugongs, and sea cows. Number 7. The pinnipeds, seals, sea lions, and walruses evolved from primitive bears, and Eneliarctos is a transitional form between these two groups. Eneliarctos had a body like a seal, but lacked the adaptations to the skull, ears, and nose that would evolve later. Moreover, Eneliarctos's flippers still had long toes and claws like a bear. Eneliarctos is a clear intermediate step between a land-dwelling lifestyle and an aquatic lifestyle. Number 6. Merychippus is a species of horse from the Middle Miocene. As grasses flourished and steppes overtook forest habitats, early horses adapted larger, more durable teeth to eat these new grasses. They also developed longer legs, lifted some of their toes off the ground, and shifted their weight onto their larger front toe, all so that they could run faster and escape from predators. Merychippus, with 3 toes and medium-sized teeth, is an intermediate form between many-toed, small-toothed browsing mammals like Hyracotherium and one-toed, large-toothed grazing mammals like the modern horse. The evolution of the horse is one of the most well-documented cases of evolution. Number 5. This next transitional fossil draws upon evidence in both the fossil record and embryology. Synagnathrus was a synapsid, or mammal-like reptile, that lived in the mid to late Triassic. This creature's mammalian features include differentiated teeth, an upright stance, and a secondary palate so that it could eat and breathe at the same time. Synagnathrus also had pits on its snout, which suggest whiskers and, in turn, hair. But, like a reptile, it still had splayed forelimbs and primitive ear structure. Reptiles have several bones in their lower jaw, but mammals have just one. In later synapsids, the dentary would grow larger, and the other bones would grow smaller and recede back into the middle ear, thus forming the hammer and anvil bones. We have evidence of this in embryonic development, as the middle ear bones begin in the jaw and then move into the ear. Just like the tails and gill-like structures in human embryos, this is a marvelous example of ontogeny recapitulating phylogeny, or the development of an organism reiterating the development of a species. Number 4. The evolution of amphibians is another very well-documented case of evolution, with fossils spanning the transition from lobe-finned fish like Eusthenopteron to primitive amphibians like Ichthyostega. Tiktaalik, a 375 million-year-old fishibian unearthed in 2006, had a palate, scales, and jaws like a fish, but, like amphibians, had a mobile head and neck and an ear that could hear in air. More remarkably, Tiktaalik's front fins had wrist bones and simple fingers, and the spiracles at the top of its head suggest that it had lungs as well as gills. Tiktaalik is a perfect transitional form from fish to amphibian. Number 3. Ambulocetus, which literally means walking whale, evolved from small hoofed mammals in the early Eocene. Ambulocetus resembled a 3-meter mammalian crocodile, and had whale-like teeth, no external ears, and hind legs more adapted for swimming than walking on land. Like Pisociren, this early whale had an amphibious lifestyle, and later whales grew ever more adapted to life in the water. Basilosaurus, a sleek, completely aquatic whale from 38 million years ago, still had vestigial hind limbs that were probably used for clasping the partner during mating. Just as Ambulocetus is a transitional form between hoofed, land-dwelling ancestors and legged, amphibious protocetids, Basilosaurus is a transitional form between these protocetids and more advanced whales. Number 2. Lancelets are a living group of invertebrates that have existed since the Cambrian period, over 500 million years ago. With a notochord, a backbone-like structure, a muscular tail, gill slits, and a digestive tract along the belly, lancelets closely resemble fish, and early lancelets were very likely the ancestors of all vertebrates. Fossils of Pikaia and other lancelet-like organisms have been found in the Burgess Shale in Canada and Shengjiang in China, and these specimens, along with their living counterparts, provide a good insight into the origins of vertebrates. Number 1. It would be remiss of me not to include a human transitional fossil on this list, and what a find it is. In 1976, Mary Leakey uncovered a set of 3.6 million-year-old footprints left in a deposit of volcanic ash in Laetoli. These ancient footsteps are further proof of bipedalism in our early ancestors, and have been identified as belonging to an early Australopithecine, most likely Afarensis. Australopithecines had small brains, long arms, and short legs like apes, but they still had crucial adaptations to the hip, leg, and feet that allowed for bipedal walking. Not only are these the real footprints of a distant human ancestor, but this is actually a preserved event in the life of an individual from millions of years ago. For this reason, the Australopithecine footsteps in Laetoli are my favorite transitional fossils.
Now that is evolution.
A major misconception among creationists is that transitional organisms would not survive. Let me give you a fairly pedestrian counterargument. Animal breeding is a good simulation of evolution. This is because breeders select desirable traits for breeding over others, just as environmental selective pressures select advantageous traits for survival in nature. Given enough generations of selective breeding, the major types of dog will probably split into separate species. Therefore, you could say that the current breeds of dog are transitional forms on the way to future dog species. But most dog breeds, or transitional forms, if you will, survive perfectly well. And evolution doesn't work the way that many creationists think. Evolution is the slow process of adding small, incremental changes onto an already functioning organism. This is how the eye evolved. The eye seems to have evolved independently dozens of times, but we can see a progression from simple to complex in the natural world, with photoreceptive proteins in some single-celled protozoans. Starting with a bunch of photoreceptive cells on a multicellular animal, a deepening pit of these cells, like in a planarian, and a pinhole opening, like in a nautilus, would enable the owner to sense the direction of light and view images. Developing a lens, a more complex structure, and cells that can sense color would grant even more precise and useful vision. These stages, or transitional forms, in the evolution of the eye, are all improvements upon the previous step, but are still all advantageous and useful in their own way. Evolution works through minor changes accumulating over incredible lengths of time. This led all the way from bacteria to us, billions of years later. So, transitional fossils. Some creationists don't think they exist, but I just presented, 14, I think, in total. I've shown you the transitional forms for ceratopsians, manatees, seals, horses, mammals, amphibians, whales, vertebrates, and humans. And paleontologists have used the fossil records to plot out the evolutionary history of most other major life forms on the planet. Evolution is a fact of the natural world, supported by loads of evidence, not just transitional fossils, and I think it's more miraculous than any creation myth.
This planet's amazing.
Thank you for watching. Cheers!
Hello, gentlemen. Creationists, you have no credibility. Make your time.